today's video I'm going to be talking about learning to accept ourselves, or accept yourself. And so yeah, I hope you enjoy this. This is a weird thing to talk about basically because I was basically having a conversation with some friends about almost a week ago, so this is like last week. And there I was talking about one of the other things which I had discussed in the channel earlier, which was about basically relationships, and how I've discussed that if you ask someone out or when you're operating in the world, there's this aspect of ourselves which basically gets triggered in those moments, which leads us to really dislike ourselves. And one of my friends basically said that I should basically make a video about that, and at that particular moment I construed that whole phenomena as self-hatred, which seemed a bit intense, but that's what it feels like, I think, at times, which is an element of kind of self-loathing or self-hatred or demeaning yourself in your own mind. And so basically today my video is going to be about that, and in turn, if you come to deal with that, it's essentially then about how you accept yourself. I didn't want to really construe it as how do you overcome self-hatred or something like that, because that sounds a bit detached and a bit cheesy, and it doesn't seem to really stick, as something which is real. But a phenomena whereby you're in a situation, and I'm going to kind of term it in that way, whereby you're in a situation, whether it's at work or whether it's dealing with your partner or a friend or a family member, and something is said or something is experienced in that moment, and you feel a deep sense of loathing and a deep sense of really feeling like someone's really smashed you psychologically or internally. That phenomena I'm kind of construing as an element of kind of self-hatred or self-dislike or lack of accepting of yourself. So that's kind of what I want to address. Again, I haven't really prepared anything, so I don't really have a plan for what I'm going to say. I'm just going to riff and then see what comes off it. But this is something which I definitely suffer from a lot. It's something which I've gotten better at with time. And so I was reflecting on what has happened in my life of late, which has caused me to kind of come from a place of feeling very much like I couldn't really be someone who can or is or should be allowed to even exist in the world. I have always had this weird thought that that I'm not someone who can be in the world, whatever that world was. So I always tried to kind of choreograph aspects of my life in a way whereby I was hidden from most of the world, basically, because by me going into the world I felt too much like I was unable to cope, basically, with the anxiety, with the pain, whatever you want to call it. Just couldn't cope with it, and so I tried to avoid it. I tried to construe a life where I was safe and okay and everything was fine, and that basically meant being alone most of the time. That meant genuinely trying to avoid situations, whether that's work situations or social situations, which will trigger that feeling that I'm now in the world and it's dangerous and I'm scared, and all sorts of other internal dialogue which makes me feel really uneasy. And so from that place, I've kind of now arrived at a place where I can kind of be in the world more. I can be in the world in a way which is competent and okay, and I feel quite comfortable in myself, and I'm getting better at that. So for example, at work, I feel happy. Like today I had a really good day. I took on something which was challenging, but I did it well and I was enthusiastic. Or in the relationship, at times I have some degree of self-doubt, but I'm also more comfortable now in terms of voicing what I need to say and trusting myself even though it feels uncomfortable. And with friends similarly, forming bonds and connections which feel sincere but not overwhelmingly powerful in the impact they may have on my psyche, whereas before a small social meeting would kind of throw me and I'd have to kind of make sense of it in various extremes, basically. So like I'm talking from a point of when I would be really self-critical, and that was more when I was doing my bachelor's, and at the start of my master's, like I could hear it and I would be beating myself down, to then getting to more recently when I started working here in my new job about a year and a bit ago, where something would happen in a social setting and I'd kind of be like thrown, and I'd kind of have to make sense of it by modeling it in some way, which is different to being really cruel to yourself, but you're still really sensitive to these small things. And all of that is happening because there's this part of the world which I can't make sense of, this part of the world which I can't really be in, and so I have to kind of avoid it, and I have to kind of test it, and then I'd really work hard at modeling it, and then kind of dip my toe again in it. And now that's not really the case, you know. So I was trying to reflect what's happened in my life a little bit, which has caused this shift. And I think fundamentally, the biggest shift which has occurred is that I've just had to do it. I've had to be in situations where I am in the world. So at university, I could avoid it. Now I have to go to work. I just have to, because that's just something which I need to do in order to make a living, so I can just be a functional person. And then also, I don't have to be in a relationship, but I am in a relationship. And in a way, I kind of felt like I had to be in one after a while. I couldn't avoid it anymore. It was just too large a thing, and I just had to be in it. And so now I'm in it. And so I think, I don't really know if I have a tip per se, because it's just too complicated a thing to really talk about and be like, oh, this is what you can do, and you would just get over self-hatred. I think probably it's a case of trying to put yourself in situations which make you uncomfortable, but uncomfortable in a way whereby you think it's a challenge, you know? So you're kind of out of your comfort zone. I've done that before, where I've kind of had this boundary of discomfort which I avoid, but within my comfort, within my narrow kind of sphere of kind of, this is the rest of the world, this is the world I'm going to live in that I'm really like punishing myself and experiencing uncomfortable phenomena, whether that's through meditation or some kind of other practice which I may adopt, and kind of weird experimentation on things like diet, or things like how I'm treating myself, or how I'm going to behave in relation to other people. All of that is a kind of testing of myself, but I've never really expanded my horizon before. Now I feel like I'm kind of expanding my horizon. So I have to go to work, but I also do things at work which make me uncomfortable, which I think are scary, which I'm like, fuck, I don't know if I can actually do this. I don't know if I'll be able to make sense of this. But I kind of go ahead and do it anyway, with a bit of nudge, but I just go and do it, you know? And that gives me a sense of confidence, because I'm like, oh, I can actually do this, I can do this, and next time around, I'm more comfortable doing it. And so as a result of that voice, that creeping feeling that I'm no longer, I'm someone who cannot be in the world, I'm not fit to be in the world, all of that begins to dissipate, because now I'm in situations which I would hate to be in, and because they're so scary, and I'm actually pushing further, I'm going further and more beyond. And so as a result, I'm able to kind of feel okay about myself, because it's giving me that sense of confidence. Or when it comes to relationships, or friendships, things which I wouldn't want to say, or I'm too scared to say, because I'm like, I just don't know if I could do that. That boundary which I've placed upon myself, trying to expand that, and being someone who is a bit different to, or not different necessarily, but more diverse in relation to my partner or my friends, you know. And that sometimes means that you have to break through certain barriers which you may have placed for yourself. For example, I've always had this feeling that if I haven't get into an argument or something like that with my partner, if I'm angry towards them, that's a really bad thing, that's really awful, and I feel really guilty about that, or even at the thought of entertaining that. But as a result, I think sometimes when you suppress a particular emotion, such as that of anger or annoyance or whatever it is, something negative which you're not supposed to feel, because you're this person who is going to approach this really nicely and kindly, when you actually suppress all of those things, then the thing which you're trying to avoid will come out in other ways. So you might as well experience a bit of anger, you may as well express some frustration or annoyance in that moment, and accept that and allow yourself to do that, because if you don't, then it will come up in other areas. And this is just something which is relevant for me. For you, it might be something else, you know. But my point is that within the domain of relationship, again, it's about anchoring certain things and trying to do certain things, whether it's physical things, or you actually, in terms of like the activities which you undertake, or whether it's more emotional openness, and kind of trying to express the different aspects of yourself, whatever it is, kind of trying to extend that boundary which you place for yourself, trying to extend that feeling that I'm not someone who will ever do that. If you have that thought, trying to go and do that particular thing, and seeing what happens, you know, and just see what you make of it. And I think often what I found is that friends and my partner is like, she's quite different. She likes doing things which are quite different to what I'm used to, and I resist it a lot of the times, but sometimes I go and do it, and it's quite interesting, and I engage with it, and I really like it. It makes me so happy. So I think my point is that whatever, if I guess as I'm saying this, I'm trying to make sense of it. Whatever boundary you've placed upon yourself in terms of this is the safe world, this is the unsafe world, and we all have that, I think, to an extent. For me, that was very small. For other people, it may be a bit broader, but trying to do something which is going to get you out of that, get you beyond that, even if it's a little bit, I think will help you curb that voice. And I know for the longest of times, anytime I would say that, like, oh, I have this feeling, I have this lack of confidence, I don't believe in myself, I don't think I'm worth anything, blah blah blah. And I remember, like, some people would say, I think, like, my dad would say that you just have to face it. And to me that just sounded a bit like, what is that? That's not really advice, you know. And I still kind of believe that. I think if I've conceptualized it in my way of, like, you just have to face it, like, there's an element of you feeling tortured and feeling almost a victim of your circumstance. And to an extent, sometimes we are. Like I was saying before, I have to work. I don't really have a choice in that. I could just refuse, but that would be quite difficult for me, at least. So I have to do that. There's an element of your kind of, I suppose, external world kind of dictating what you do. But as well as that, you can start playing in that particular dynamic and not feel like you just have to face it because this is just what it is. But rather, you can start facing it in a way whereby you're meeting it, openly, and you're going towards it openly. And that is something which is quite interesting to me. So I think there's an element of kind of going out of your comfort zone, behavioral traits or physical activity which feels uncomfortable for you to exhibit, traits or activity which you think is like, no way, I'm not going to do that. Trying to do some of that, I think, is really quite powerful in terms of kind of curbing the more darker aspects of our psyche. I think those darker aspects can really fester and linger when we get stuck in behavioral patterns and routines, like our physical activity routines, which are just the same, which just feel comfortable, which feel almost familiar and monotonous, and then you're just like, this other part of the world is just too scary, I can't do this, and going and doing that, and doing it because it feels daunting but simultaneously exciting. Not doing it because you feel like there has to be an element of daunting and exciting. A part of you is like, that could be kind of cool, if I could do that, that would be kind of cool, but I don't think I'm the type of person who could do that. That feeling, you go and do that. If it's an element of like, I should go do that because I'm a loser if I don't do that thing. Because there's nothing positive coming there, Because as I was saying this, I could remember times when I've had that feeling. For example, when I was single, like the idea of going out and meeting people and partying. The only reason, I didn't want to do it, I don't like it. The only reason why I thought I should maybe do it is because I thought I'd be a loser if I don't. That's not a good incentive. Go towards something which feels positive rather than doing something because you want to avoid a negative, essentially. Something because it feels positive but daunting is much, because if you're like, I could be the type of person who, if he or she did that, that would be really cool, but I just don't know if I am that person. When you think like that, that's something which you should do. When you think the other way, which is like, fuck, like I just don't know if I don't do that, I'll suck, or I'm a loser because I don't do that, whatever it is, don't do that. So if you have something positive, but it's daunting, you should go and do that. Whether that's a behavioral trait which you want to exhibit to other people, and it's not always as simple as that. For example, I was talking about anger, like there's no, although there can be an element of freedom which can come, the idea that you could argue with someone and be okay in doing that. There's an element of empowerment there. I certainly feel that. For you, it may be something else. So I guess my point is behavioral traits and physical boundaries and routines. Things which you think are exciting but daunting, you kind of want to be that person, it'd be kind of cool if you were, go and do those things. And I think if you start doing those things and you start exhibiting those behaviors as well, your kind of voice in the head, which is going to be like really pressing against you and putting you down, it's not going to have much ammo. Because when it's going to be like cynical and be like, see, you can't, you'd be like, but hey, I did this and this and this, and you have evidence for that. So it just won't have that much ammo, because the reality which you're living in will no longer be in alignment with the voice in your head. The voice in your head, which is really negative and puts you down, is only going to do it when the boundaries get narrower and narrower. And that's when resentment builds up towards yourself and maybe towards other people as well. When you expand those boundaries, that's no longer present, you know. So that's my video for today. It's not exactly as profound as I thought it may be or could be, but I don't know, like, this is just something which, this is the best I could give, essentially. And actually, in a way, I'm just being self-effacing or deprecating for no reason. I think this is the best advice which I have about this particular topic at the time. And it's good advice, it's about broadening your horizons, essentially. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.